In the span of 72 hours, the U.S. Navy Secretary was fired while enforcing an active blockade of Iranian ports. Peace talks in Pakistan collapsed before the Americans even boarded the plane, and the Department of Justice authorized bringing back the firing squad. I want to show you why these three things are not separate stories. Hello and welcome. I am Rick Orban. And you have started watching The Truth Global. On a single Saturday, April 25th, 2026, three things happened in America that, taken together, tell you almost everything you need to know about where this country is heading. And I don't think most people fully clocked what they add up to. First, Donald Trump scrubbed an 18-hour diplomatic flight to Pakistan at the last second after Iran's foreign minister had already left the building. Literally. The Iranian envoy took off from Islamabad, and barely an hour later, Trump got on Truth Social and said, I'm paraphrasing, "We hold all the cards. They can call us." Second, the Pentagon, which is already running an active naval blockade of Iranian ports in the middle of a fragile ceasefire, had just fired its own Navy Secretary. Not before the war, not after, right in the thick of it. No warning, no explanation. Just a post on X saying John Phelan was leaving, effective immediately. And third, and this one flew way under the radar, the Department of Justice officially reintroduced firing squads, electrocution, and gas chambers as legitimate methods of federal execution in 2026. Here's what I want you to think about. These three stories are not separate. They are part of the same machinery. Stick around, because by the end of this, the picture is going to be very clear. Let's start in Pakistan, because that's where the dominoes fell first. For days, there had been this frantic diplomatic shuffle. Pakistan playing mediator, the US floating the idea of direct talks with Iran, and Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff reportedly prepping to board a plane for Islamabad. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, actually showed up. He flew in, held high-level meetings with Pakistani officials, and delivered Tehran's list of demands for ending the war. Key demand: lift the US naval blockade before any talks. That's not a small ask. That's the whole ball game. Now here's the thing. Tehran never actually confirmed it would sit down with the Americans directly. Iranian state media was crystal clear. Araghchi would engage with Pakistani mediators only. Not Witkoff, not Kushner. The whole direct talks framing was, as we'd say, getting ahead of itself. And then Araghchi left. He got on a plane to Oman. And somewhere around that moment, Trump pulled the plug. The president told Fox News, "You're not making an 18-hour flight to sit around talking about nothing." Then he added the line that really matters. "We have all the cards." Is this a negotiating tactic or a breakdown? That's exactly what's in dispute. And that dispute matters more than the drama itself. So what actually is Trump's Iran strategy right now? Because from the outside, it can look chaotic. Canceled flights, Twitter ultimatums, a war that's technically on ceasefire but involves active naval seizures of ships. But analysts who've been tracking this closely say it's not chaotic. It's deliberately coercive. The administration is operating what you might call a maximum pressure with maximum ambiguity doctrine. Keep Iran guessing, keep the costs escalating, force Tehran to blink first, and to do it in a way that looks like a capitulation. The naval blockade is central to this. The US Navy has 3 aircraft carriers in or heading to the Middle East. It has already seized ships in the Strait of Hormuz, which, by the way, is the choke point through which roughly 20% of the world's oil and gas moves. Iran says those seizures violate the ceasefire. The White House says they're targeting international vessels, and the blockade is massively effective. This is where things connect. The canceled trip is not Trump abandoning diplomacy. Trump himself confirmed, when asked directly, that canceling the flight doesn't mean resuming the war. No, it doesn't mean that. We haven't thought about it yet, he said. So what is it? It's a signal. Don't come to us. We don't need this meeting more than you do. Now let's talk about what happened inside the Pentagon, because this is the part that genuinely stunned people in Washington. On Wednesday, April 22nd, while the U.S. Navy was enforcing an active blockade of Iranian ports in the middle of a fragile ceasefire, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth fired the Secretary of the Navy. John Phelan, a Trump campaign megadonor, a financier, the 79th Secretary of the Navy, was told to resign or be fired. No press briefing, no formal announcement. He reportedly didn't even know it was coming. He found out by seeing a post on X from the Pentagon's own spokesman, Sean Parnell. And Phelan, get this, didn't even believe it was real at first. He went to the White House complex and started knocking on doors in the Eisenhower Executive Office building, asking staffers if they had any information, asking if the president was really aware of what was happening. The official reason given? Months of tension with Hegseth over shipbuilding reforms moving too slowly. Phelan was also accused of going around Hegseth directly to Trump, which Hegseth saw as an end run. At a White House meeting on shipbuilding, Trump himself reportedly got frustrated, told Hegseth to take care of it, and that was that. It was the first dismissal of a military service secretary in Trump's second term, but it was far from the first firing. Hegseth has now removed over a dozen generals and admirals, including the Army Chief of Staff and the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Here's what makes the Phelan firing genuinely alarming. And I want to be precise here, because the politics around this are loud and it's easy to lose the substance. The Navy is not some bureaucratic backwater right now. It is the central instrument of U.S. military power in this conflict. 3 aircraft carriers, a naval blockade of Iranian ports, active enforcement in the Strait of Hormuz. The Navy is, at this moment, the thing that makes Trump's Iran strategy physically real in the world. And the man responsible for leading that institution was removed without warning, without transition, while operations were ongoing. Acting Secretary Hung Kao, a 25-year Navy veteran and former Republican Senate candidate, stepped in. He's already pledged to accelerate shipbuilding. But continuity of leadership in a war is not a minor administrative footnote. The people who've been watching this stuff for decades are flagging it. At the same time, you have to ask, is this purge about competence or is it about loyalty? Because the pattern is consistent. Every senior military leader removed under Hegseth has in some way had an institutional identity that predated or complicated Trump's second-term agenda. You take out anyone who might push back. You install people who will execute. And then, on Friday, April 24th, the day before Trump pulled his envoys from Pakistan, the Department of Justice released what it called a report on restoring and strengthening the federal death penalty. And buried inside the bureaucratic language is something genuinely historic. The DOJ has now authorized firing squads, electrocution, and lethal gas as methods of federal execution. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche signed off on it, directing the Bureau of Prisons to expand its execution protocols. The stated reason: difficulty obtaining the drugs used in lethal injections. The administration has already authorized seeking the death penalty against 44 defendants since Trump took office. 9 of those already have formal death penalty pursuit underway. Blanche called the Biden moratorium on executions a failure of duty, saying, quote, "Justice had been thwarted." Now, same day this announcement dropped, newly elected Pope Leo issued a statement reiterating the Catholic Church's opposition to the death penalty. The Vatican and the DOJ, on the same Friday, pointing in opposite directions on the sanctity of human life. That's not a small symbolic moment. Only 5 U.S. states currently permit firing squads. The DOJ is now effectively nationalizing that option. And this isn't just a domestic legal question. It lands internationally, at a moment when the U.S. is already in a war and conducting what critics call an illegal naval blockade. So let's zoom out and actually connect these three threads, because they belong together and the mainstream coverage is not doing that job. What you're watching is a single administration operating a coherent, if radical, theory of state power across three domains simultaneously. Foreign, maximum coercion over Iran, no concessions, no travel, no meetings on their terms. Military, purge the leadership structure until only loyalists remain, no matter the operational timing. Domestic justice, expand the coercive power of the state over life and death, literally. This is not chaos. This is a doctrine. You can agree or disagree with it politically, but it hangs together as a logic. The state should project absolute strength and absolute will. Concession is weakness. Institutional inertia is the enemy. Punishment of adversaries, of criminals, of anyone who crosses the line should be swift, severe, and visible. This is where things connect in a way that should make you sit up. The same week that America threatened to resume bombing Iran if ceasefire negotiations failed, it also announced it might execute federal prisoners by firing squad. The message being broadcast, internally and externally, is the same message. This administration does not blink. Whether that posture produces results, a deal with Iran, deterrence of future threats, lower crime, is genuinely contested. But the posture itself is now unambiguous. And that has consequences, whether or not you support the approach. Here's where things stand as of today, April 25th, and here's what to watch in the coming days and weeks. On Iran, Arachi has landed in Oman. Oman has historically been the back channel through which the US and Iran have communicated, even when they're publicly at each other's throats. The fact that he went there next, not home to Tehran, is notable. It suggests the diplomatic door is still cracked open, even if the Islamabad window just slams shut. On the Pentagon, watch whether Hung Kao gets confirmed in a permanent role, and how quickly. Watch whether the pace of shipbuilding actually accelerates, because that's been Trump and Hegseth's stated goal. And watch for any further firings. The pattern so far suggests the restructuring isn't done. On the death penalty, the legal battles will be immediate. Civil liberties organizations are already gearing up. Courts will be asked to weigh in on whether firing squads and gas chambers meet the Eighth Amendment's bar against cruel and unusual punishment. That fight could take years, but the administration's goal, clearly, is to move faster than the courts can block it. The larger story here is about American power at a hinge point, what it does with that power, who controls it, and what principles it's exercised under. Those questions don't have easy answers, but they're the right questions to be asking right now. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button. This story is moving fast, and we're going to stay on it.